Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Friday, time for an update. You know the drill.
Can see and hear.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, boy, after a few years, more than three, more than four technically, but we, as always, didn't start work until October of that year. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what to say at the beginning of an update. Hey, was it a good week? Hey, wasn't it a good week? Hey, it was an okay week. So, I need to start coming up with some things other than, hey, we had another good week, especially when we have just been running a great streak of good weeks after good weeks after good weeks with some great weeks as well thrown in. This is a bit of a short week for us. Obviously, Memorial Day for those in the U.S. Memorial Day is on Monday, so some of us are gone today. So we didn't have quite the full team here for the entire time, but still, lots of things have gotten done. Lots of cool things. As for today's or the weekend's test, jury is still out. I am waiting to hear over the next couple hours about a couple things we are trying to track down. If we can track down one of them, we'll have certainly one test or a test of one aspect of the game. If we can track down all the things we're looking at, we might have a little bit more robust test. But I'll let you folks know in the next couple hours where we're at. Just as an FYI, the studio is closed on Monday, again, Memorial Day. So we won't be doing anything then. So let's get started. Number one, tech, terrain updates for realm control. Last week, a lot of new code went in to fix some bugs and other issues with the terrain system, and that went very well. So continued progress on not only the entire procedurally generated terrain system, which is pretty cool to begin with, but the concept of how the terrain will change based on which realm takes it over. Sorry, something in the throat. So next up, performance improvements. I've been talking about this for the last few weeks. When it comes to VFX, obviously the first pass of the system went in a little while ago, and George and the team continue to work on improving it. So it's a combination of George and Dave and Andrew, especially when Andrew was out in Seattle. Continue to work on making already a very powerful and cool VFX system faster, more powerful, and cooler. So that's going to continue. In today's stand-ups, George actually called it out as well as an item. Called it out as an item and talked about very significant speed increases. So all good stuff. Next up, seamless zone transitions. So yeah, we've been testing that for a couple weeks now. We're testing that today. That's one of the things that we had to spend a bit too much time on this week, finding a really obscure bug, which we did find. And Colin has put in multiple new versions, and we're also looking for other instances of that same problem. But for now, yeah, it's working really well. It's not working flawlessly, which is where we want to get to. And as soon as we can get to that, or even close to that, we'll be testing that again. And right now, the issues are minor, like you'll see a loading screen like that. Very quick. It's not one you have to wait for. By the time you take it all in, it's gone. But it's still a loading screen, and that needs to go away, just as it was going away in older versions, or almost totally went away. And same with a little bit of lag. And for those who've been in the test already, by little bit we mean teeny tiny. We're trying to get rid of that as well. Once that can happen, we'll put that into testing for you alpha folks. Next up, UI. So Yeah, this is a kind of generalist answer. Lots of new things with the UI, various parts of the UI, and various UIs, all being worked on in code, in design, in concepting. Just, again, necessary work. Probably, I would think you folks will like most of it. I think some of it was placeholder, and you'll know it's placeholder, but it's better than, for example, slash commands. But we got some pretty cool ideas, some pretty useful ideas, because after all, cool isn't everything. Useful and playable, kind of more important. Wounds in trauma and trauma. So, we had an older system with wounds, and now we have new code, and we are revisiting the old code. My guess is we'll probably find more work that we need to do there. Won't be surprising, and it certainly won't take a lot of time. This was not a major system, like the ability system. So whatever work we'll have to do, it won't be a big deal. Salvaging. So yeah, another part of crafting is making its way into beta, or alpha for now. It will certainly be into beta. I wasn't. That was not one of the things that was on my list as a must-have. But thanks to the work the gameplay programmers have been doing, and the one who's been certainly leading the charge on this, Christina, we are making more rapid progress with a lot of things, including crafting. So yeah, right now, if you create an item, and the item happens to be made out of an alloy, you can get the alloy back, and then you can get the components that the alloy was made of back. Now, obviously, the way you get it back, the percentage you get it back, all of that will change. It's not even subject to change. It will change during beta. Siege weapons. Yes. So we can now deploy siege weapons. We're getting very close, meaning weeks, to having a really good solution in place. We know what we need to do. We just have to do it for having siege weapons. So you've seen the first ones, the Scorpions. They will go in, and then after that we'll be looking at other siege weapons. That's certainly one of the things that is important to me. It's important for a number of reasons, fun being one of them, because there's nothing like hurling things at other things and watching blocks or buildings eventually fall down. But it's important for testing. For you folks who are in our alpha tests before the ability, refactor, or the ability apocalypse, depending on how you want to look at it, we had lots of things flying through the air. We had lots of projectiles. We had lots of the kind of objects you want to put up and fly through the air so you can test systems. Oh, I apparently am not speaking loud enough. Max was trying to subtly move the mic, so no problem. I want them back again. We need it for beta, we need it for testing our tech, and we need it attached to bots as well, because frankly, there's nothing like showing, 1,000 bots hurling projectiles, manning siege engines for that, good old school siege feeling. So, as also to test tech. So that's going to be coming soon. Sound. DB has completed an additional ambient track, in which Gabe has been helping them, and now we are working on realm-specific landing music. And by landing, I don't mean when you land on the ground. This is when you come into your realm's starting area. Animation. So we've got some polished paths on the smaller knockbacks, meaning not the ones where you go flying back, 500 miles after being hit by Donnie. I'm just talking about the much smaller, more normal knockbacks that you're going to see in the game. Because after all, there should be a series of knockbacks. There shouldn't be just, hey, you get knocked back and truly, get knocked off a cliff. There should be knockbacks that you get that will stun you, that will push you back a little bit, that will push you back more. That'll push you back more. Sorry, you guys who followed Discord yesterday or last night, or my I don't think I talked about it today's stream. I had a bit of food poisoning last night.
I mentioned it this morning.
Yeah, from Smash Burger. Hey guys, I loved your stuff. Still love your stuff. You know, our local place, but man, oh man, a whole bunch of us have gotten sick eating chicken. Might want to look into that. You know, Fairfax, right by us. So yeah, I'm still feeling a little bit of that. But anyway, so we do want a series of knockbacks, and they have to be logical. They have to be sensible, especially again for simple things. Then when magic is involved, or you get knocked back by something very large, impacting with your body at high speed, you should be able to get knocked further back. So passes continue on that. Sandra's also been working on pole arm swings, and so you'll be able to. Don't know if you can see that yet, but you'll certainly see Scott's knockback video. Another concept on the UI, on the health bar UI, that's going to continue to change. As always, don't panic, don't fret, don't worry, don't be concerned. If anything you see in that UI worries you, it's alpha right now, and even when we get to say it's beta, it doesn't matter. We're working on this early for one reason. We're going to iterate on it. We'll chuck it out if we need to and put in something better. We're not waiting to the last minute. Won't mention any names. We're not waiting to the last minute to do this. We're doing it now, so just keep letting us know what you think. You know, keep playing with it, keep offering suggestions, and eventually we'll get to a solution that I think the vast majority of you will be happy with. And as always, since so much of our UI is customizable, don't sweat it. More on. Mike has some new torch VFX for, astonishingly, wall torches, and we're working on some realm-specific torches. We thought that was a cool idea. That was it John who had it originally? I think it was John's idea for the realm torches. Hey, whose idea was it for the realm torches first? Was John? That's what I thought. That John had come up with, and so I think that's a cool little thing, to add to the game. Nice, fun, polishy kind of. Hey, we actually care enough to spend a little extra time so that the Viking torches and the TDD torches and the Arthurian torches are actually different. Next up, helmets. John streamed his work on helmets this week. That will also be in the update. And so last and certainly not least, Dion finished a few more assets for the deciduous forest, or at least one of the deciduous forests. So we're going to continue to do that. One of our big pushes, as you can imagine, with any of our assets, whether it's the deciduous forest or the fall biome or anything like that, is a combination of looking good and performance. You've seen the engine perform just beautifully currently. We want to keep that up. We want to keep pushing it more and more, because for us it's all about the large-scale battles. It's not about having a half a dozen catapults or around a castle, or having 20 on 20 or anything like that. We're going for the big numbers. You want us to go for the big numbers, and the only way to do that is, excuse this word, but it's a good word, a holistic approach.
Too corporate for you?
Yeah, too corporate and fuzzy at the same time, right? It's sort of the thing that you'd see happen or see used in one of those corporate feel-good session, team feel-good sessions. But it's actually the right way to look at things. Generally, unless there's a major bug somewhere or a major problem somewhere, you're not going to just go in and go, hey, I know a way that, when we make a change to one of the trees, we're going to get a 20% increase in frame rate. It's all about looking at every asset you have, looking at the system you have, and seeing what you can do to shave off a little bit of time. Because the more that you can shave off, when you then add up all in the aggregate, again to sound corporate, of everything that's in an area, in a biome, in a battle. Everything little bit you save really starts to add up when you have potentially 1,000 or more people on the screen, or in our case, the kind of density we have of objects in our game. This is something I briefly mentioned, on the forums. It's, when you look at other MMOs, a lot of the times you won't see the kind of densely packed areas that you see in our game, where you have so many trees, or you have so much stuff around. And that's actually not as easy as it might seem from both the client and server side. So we want to keep not only doing what we're doing now with that kind of density, but we also want to improve it even more. So these little savings, these sometimes bigger savings, really start to add up over the course of development for a game. So, yes, sir.
Boring Jerk has a great comment.
Sure.
Making the world a better place through holistic aggregate frame rate savings.
Nicely said. Nicely said. I like that. But that's really what it amounts to. And this is something, whether it applies to art or applies to programming as well. A little bit of savings here and a little bit of savings there really can add up, especially in a game like ours. So yeah, that's it for the top 10-ish list. Like I said earlier, I'm still waiting word on whether we'll be able to have an alpha test. I'm hoping we will at least be able to have a very directed alpha test, meaning that it won't be, hey, do this and that, but yeah, you can do some things. But I honestly do not know, and I won't know most likely for another hour or so. We want to continue to test before we open it up to you. Now, the good news, even if we don't do this week's test, based on where we are, I would be really surprised if we didn't have a test next week. We are really close to solving a couple of the issues. Like, we know what's wrong, it's just a matter of making sure that other, buglets of the same type, don't exist within the code. So even if we can't do it this week, I'm pretty confident we'll have one up next week. And the stuff that we'll be showing, one of which, of course, is seamless zone transitions, and the other one being a refactor of some of the building code that Rob did, is already starting to pay benefits in terms of what Ben is able to do for the game. So, yeah, all is good. All is really good. If I sound a little bit more relaxed than I have at times, it's because I am. It's because I know where we're at. I know where we're going. We have, two great teams now. The folks in Seattle are just kicking ass. And since our team has already here been doing that for a while, yeah, it's a lot of joy feelings, especially when you can, really look at our engine. And I know I've said this a few times, probably more than a few, but tech is important. Never underestimate the tech, the value of tech. It's improbable, right? Anyway, sorry, couldn't resist. Tech is crucial. Whether it's this game, whether it's a game like WoW, whether it's something in between, having the ability to do what we can already do in this game is pretty special. And where we're going to be in the next 6 months, as we continue, so not only to get into beta before then, but also as we continue to expand the tech, you folks are going to be really happy that you hung around. Well, I can't guarantee it, because after all, it's your own feelings. I would be pretty surprised if the vast majority of you weren't really happy that you showed patience in giving us a chance, to deliver. It's been a long road. It's still going to be, still have a road in front of us. But when you look at where we are today, what we can do for a game that's building its own engine, that's still in alpha, we're in really good shape. even if it's not always readily apparent. So, with that, and since it's now about 4:20, maybe 15, 20 minutes, maybe a little bit more of Q&A. I want to get back and get an update done. I want to finish off another doc as well before I head out today. So let's get started.
Alrighty, give us your questions for Mark Jacobs. Here we go.
We have to do the box too. Forgot about that.
Oh yeah, okay. Let's try to remember to give the 5-minute warning before we stop taking questions. Lorgarn asks, if and when can we expect to hear a sneak peek of the landing music and ambience tracks? Wait, I pronounced that wrong.
No.
Love music. Can't wait to hear some of what might end up in CU.
Oh yeah, you know what we should do? I don't know if we've done this, have we, Max? We haven't put up samples of DB's music.
We have not. He's done some streams, but
We've
other
done
than that,
streams.
we haven't done.
You're
music.
looking at me. Do you have something to contribute to this?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. And
Okay, thank you for distracting me, Tyler.
It's
Go back to
something.
work.
It's something Tyler and I have actually talked about recently.
Yeah, so, really like duh. We'll get some of that up for you folks. Yeah, I don't know why we haven't done that yet. DB's done a great job for us, and yeah, duh. So, thank you for the duh. We will. I know. We will do something about that.
All right. Odelvik asks, will plot markers always be visible, especially empty plot markers, which aren't really part of the game world, but more an augmented reality UI element? Plus, think of the frame rate.
Well, there'll be things like plot markers, obviously. If we don't want to make claiming plots a question of you guys. Okay, one space to the left. Try to claim a plot. Oh, can't do that. Oops, one space to the left. Yeah, that would be boring as heck. So yes, there'll be a way that you'll be able to see plot markers when you try to claim, when you're trying to do things to plots, because guesswork, that kind of guesswork, that would be really ugly. But wait, we said no hand holding. So maybe
Wow.
we should just take that out, and they can form conga lines, trying to figure out where the plots actually start. But no, we will do something about that. Certainly we don't want them up all the time in the main game. There'll be an option for you to turn on and off, plot marker toggles, so you can really see what land you're trying to claim.
Swazi asks, have you thought about some kind of friendly competition between East and West offices? Like how many lines of code written or how many bugs are squashed per week?
Now, that's the sort of thing that, we go back to pro football and offense versus defense and that sort of thing. I don't know if it's a bad idea, but I don't think it's a particularly good idea. Set teams against each other that way. That's also kind of corporate thing to do. Hey, our team in Seattle is, out-coding the guys, in Virginia. Nice idea, but for us, even if we tried to keep it friendly, just bad things could happen. We're one studio. We may have two physical locations, but we truly are one studio. I mean, here's a perfect example. I sometimes take, as you folks know, take the folks here out to movies. We've said to Seattle the same thing. Even though I'm not there, take them out to the same movies we take people out to, and we'll pay for it. That's the kind of thing that you do, as you should do, so that the team in Seattle and the team in Virginia always feel like part of the same studio. So, thanks for the idea, but no, we wouldn't do something like that.
Yomi GW2 asks, for the start of the game, what scale of numerical values for skills are you shooting for? In the hundreds for health, thousands, 10,000s, etc.?
That's all subject to change. Numbers at the end of the day really don't mean anything. If you started with the thousands, but you had a very little differential between where you start and where you end, or you start at the hundreds, and you have a large differential, then your skill gains in between won't matter very much. So this is something that we're going to decide as we move forward. Luckily it's the sort of thing that spreadsheets were made for, changing and adapting. It's a great question, it really is, but for us right now, that's not something we're worrying about. What we have in is very subject to change. Certainly over the not only the rest of alpha but beta, depending on what's going to suit the long-term interests of the game the most.
Geo Stoneheart asks, will plots be hard to claim? Like a casual player can wander around the world and claim whatever he wants.
So that's an actually more complicated question than it might seem. Also a good question. So plots within your realm are easier to claim than plots outside your realm. Your ability to claim plots, of course, is tied to your success within the game. You can't just come in and start claiming multiple plots. Obviously, that would be bad. You have to earn the right to claim a plot. Now, before anyone worries, oh my God, we're going to have to grind this. No, you're not going to have to grind this. This is not something that we've ever said is an important part of the game. It's just a mechanic to prevent people from, and I'm sure you folks might have heard this sort of stuff before, creating lots of vaults and starting to run around the world and claim as many plots as you possibly can, even though you can't use them all for a bit. Yeah, we're not going to let that happen. So, easier in your realm. Where it gets harder, of course, is on the realm of an enemy realm, in the area of an enemy realm. You have to overcome their ownership of plots. On the other hand, in more neutral areas, where a plot isn't currently owned by anyone, that will also be easy to claim. But again, important takeaways, it's not something you're going to have to grind, not certainly for your first plot. Your ability to claim multiple plots, as well as your ability to build on those plots, is something that has to be earned. It cannot be bought, and it will never be cash shopped. I friggin' guarantee it. Guarantee it.
Adric Cortesia asks, why isn't John allowed to do more armors and weapons? MJ mentioned something about techniques at the beginning of Beta 1, but I can't remember anymore.
Not sure what one has to do with the other, kind of confused. Adri, try again. And in terms of, John, he's allowed to do more armors. It's just a question of we have a lot of things to get into the game, and if we let John or any other artist just focus on one thing like armor, then other things wouldn't get done. So as always, it's a matter of time, it's not a matter of talent, and as we move through Beta 1, you'll certainly, I guarantee you can expect to see a lot more armor and weapons, etc., than you'll have at the beginning of Beta 1.
Odelvik writes, Lucilius would like to know, given the streamlining of the ability system, general positivity, and ease of creating new abilities and iterations, is there a chance that all 30 classes will exist at launch?
Oh God, no, no, yes, maybe. So why no, yes, maybe? As good as the ability system is in concept, and as great as it is so far, trying to make all 30 classes or more ready for launch would be a lot of work. And I don't mean work in just the sense of, we have to create things, but we have to balance things. So is it possible? Sure, anything is realistic. Well, actually, you don't want to say anything is possible, because that's kind of not true. But it is something that if things fell out the right way, I would certainly consider it. But what is really important to us is not having 30 classes at launch, or 27 classes, or 36 classes. What's important at launch is whatever the classes are that we have, that they are fun, playable, and balanced. Now, Not perfectly balanced, because there's no such animal in this kind of game, but balanced enough that it can all work together nicely. So we'll see. Certainly there are a couple, more than a couple, I definitely want to see in, but not enough to change how we're doing things.
Do we need to give a time warning?
We can go a little bit longer.
All right.
Questions so far have been really good.
Roadrunner LXS asks, about the transitions between islands. I was testing it the other day and didn't get a loading screen, but I did notice that if I was sprinting, I would have to toggle it back on once I transitioned.
Yep.
Is there a way to make it so it will continue, and is that part of the idea already?
Yes, it is part of, that's a bug. Of course you should, the idea of having a seamless transition where you actually lose your travel stance or your effects or anything like that means it's not a seamless transition. So yeah, all that is not working as intended. It will be working. The idea is in a seamless world, it should be seamless. You should not see loading screens. You should not, see lag. And everything you had a second before you transitioned should still be there. So, yep, great question. It is something that will certainly be fixed or in place for Beta 1.
Deathwatch 101 asks, question, can we be told more about Fiannas? Any details that aren't on the website?
Not right now, certainly. That information will certainly be coming up.
Question from the YouTube chat. Tototata asks, concerning spells, how far will you stretch min-max limits of projectile speed, range, dot duration, etc.?
As much as we can. I mean, realistically, that's kind of important, right? We want players, just as we could during earlier alpha, to have choices to make. You should have to sacrifice some range if you want power. And sacrificing range, of course, means you have to get closer to the enemy. So yeah, we want to make that very min-maxable. Because there are different situations, of course, that will arise during different sieges. If you're part of a very, very large siege, you might be willing to get a little bit closer if your side outnumbers the other side. On the other hand, you might be willing to, in a siege that isn't quite as safe for a caster, you might be willing to really lower the damage on your abilities, no matter what they are, in order to get some additional range, so you're out of range from a lot of the a lot of the defenders. So yeah, that's something I really believe in. This is obviously not a MOBA. This is not a game where players have very little control over these things. We want to give you that control. We want to give you that ability to customize your play style, sometimes moment to moment, but not in a way that changes the definition of your class. In other words, the no instant respec thing. If we can allow you folks to make the kind of choices that really can turn, for example, a mage who likes to get a bit closer because, you want that extra damage and is willing to take some, hits for it, to go, oops, now I need to, change my thinking and create some new abilities. And you don't have to respec, and you don't have to relearn or unlearn abilities. That's kind of cool. And not only is it kind of cool, it allows you to do more with your character. And that's exactly the kind of choices I want people to be able to make during the game.
Total Tana also wants to know about diseases, long-term debuffs that become stronger over time if not treated and become over-contagious plagues.
Yeah, I'd love to have something like that. The problem with those is, are they fun? Certainly the idea of having something, a major debuff cast on you, like the plague, or food poisoning from a certain restaurant, that isn't a lot of fun long term. It becomes annoying. Now, is it something that I'd be willing to consider if backers thought that was a really good idea? Yeah, I would actually, because I do think there is some benefit to it. especially since we do have healing classes in this game. So we'll see what happens, but long term, especially if they're major debuffs, probably will not be something that we would see early on, but it's something I would consider because again, I think they can be useful from a gameplay standpoint.
Naja Gaming asks, when we kill someone, are we able to loot their bodies?
So yeah, this question gets asked all the time, and my answer is always the same. This is not a full loot game. This is not a game where you can just go and kill somebody and take their stuff. We've spoken really even before the Kickstarter on how you should be able to get stuff from vanquished foes, but not in the full loot kind of method. We don't want people, especially since this game is really a crafter, is based on a crafting economy, to be able to lose their most precious sword that may have taken weeks or months for a crafter to make. So that can't happen in this game. Will you be able to get stuff because you killed somebody? Absolutely. Whether it's realm rewards or other ways of interfacing or rewarding players, that will absolutely be in the game, but nothing like full loot.
Tiggs KC asks, what techniques will you use to instill a sense of the fog of war in big battles, or is this feel not a current goal?
Oh no, that's certainly a goal. Having some fog of war, actually real fog, and abilities that players use and defenses that players use. The defenses, they go around the houses. Sorry, I had to get that. I had to get one in at least today. You guys haven't seen me for weeks, but having those sorts of defenses and defensive abilities is certainly something that we really want to see within the game.
Kjell Eilerston asks, how will you avoid zeros being OP? And how about timers for objectives, like in Weighthammer Online?
Explain, before I answer that, what you mean by zeros being OP.
Oh, I see a little way down. Corrected. Zergs, not zeros.
There we go. Thank you. In terms of Zergs being OP, look, this is something we're addressing right from the beginning. Do we want to encourage Zerg play? No. Then, of course, people say, but wait, Mark, you're just talking about large-scale battles. Exactly. Those are very different things. Typical Zerg roaming the world, doing the old keep-swap maneuver, and not, looking to encounter anybody. That's not the way to level in this game. That's not the way to earn rewards in this game. On the other hand, as we've also said, we have to build in abilities that players can use to bust up a Zerg. Because look, for all of you who played, Dark Age or other games where you've had abilities that can break up a Zerg, that actually kind of helps. We need to have that. We will have that. But it all starts with the basic premise and the most important premise of making sure that Zerg play isn't optimal. Because we all know, anyone who's played any of these games for any period of time, longer than a few, probably days before, or weeks in some cases, or months in games where you can't get to the fun stuff until you've, gotten to the top of the level grind, that that players are always going to look for the best way, the fastest way to level their characters. And if that is Zerging, it doesn't matter what else you do. People will Zerg. On the other hand, if you design the game and lay out the world so that Zerging is not optimal, it is less likely that people will play in a Zerg. That's what we're going for. That's what's so important. And yes, we absolutely intend to have lots of ways to combat the Zerg.
Odilvik asks, We learned in one of JB's streams that crafted item objects will store information of the item's base materials used in its crafting. So my question is, if an underlying component material gets changed, like buffed or nerfed, will existing items be regenerated to the new stats or left to be as a historic object with historic damage stats?
That's exactly, great question. That's exactly one of the reasons we're doing what we're doing. So that if we need to essentially, it's not even a question of it nerfing, just nerfing. There may be at times we want to improve it, but having those abilities, having the ability to do that, having ability as well, the ability to say, nope, we're not touching those items, but we're leaving them in the game, but we're touching the underlying materials. That's exactly what we're doing from a code standpoint, so we can do that. We can do either one of those things.
Adri Cortesia asks, obvious question, when are the VFX and animation systems in a good shape so you can estimate the beginning of Beta 1?
The day I announce it. I'm not trying to, you know me, Adri, I'm not trying to be a wise ass, but that's actually the answer. In terms of any sort of, because I think by your question you meant any sort of objective standards that I could lay out for you that you could look forward to in terms of, hey, we're almost there. So, the two signs that we're there is one, and this is not from a within the game standpoint, but actually outside the game, is when I tell you folks Andrew's moved off the animation system. Because it's not just a question of, hey, can we play all the animations that we think we're going to need, but it's also, hey, does Andrew have to continue to work on the core aspects of the animation system? Are there things about the tech that need improving? Once we've obviously put it up with hundreds or thousands of bots. In terms of the VFX system, I think, it's a little, and neither one is objective. They're both very subjective. But for us, the key is going to be when you can see a large-scale battle with animations and effects going off, and the game's frame rate is still very strong on last generation's cards. At that point, I would say those systems are strong enough that both Andrew and George can move on to other things full time, and that's when we can say, yep, these systems are in place, and now it's a question of adding additional functionality, or in the case of, say, VFX, well, in the case of both systems, adding more work from the arts team end versus the programming team. So that's really where we want to get to. And I wish it was black and white. I wish I could say, hey, we just have these checkboxes, but we don't, because it's more than whatever checkboxes we do have, simply because so much depends on what happens when we scale things up. So as you saw, if you were in the alpha tests with Tyler's test island, that island was set up not to be an accurate representation of what we wanted the scene to look like, because there was a lot of sparkly there, but rather something that would brute force some VFX. And we're going to keep doing that. We're going to brute force more VFX out to you folks, so you can see just how many points of light we can throw at a screen without our engine choking and dying. So, keep watching. I would expect, it's now obviously the end of May, I would expect some major updates on the VFX system in the coming weeks.
Hammer1 asks.
And hang on,
Go ahead.
in the coming weeks, no, it's my fault. But in the coming weeks, I mean few weeks as opposed to, he could mean months or, just in the next few weeks.
Hammer1 asks, will there be a mechanism to stop the larger, more back-channel ways some people affect the game? For example, a gold or goods selling website, not even in-game, but pooling real money, and similarly, guilds paying real money to enemy guilds to not show up for fights in order to trade in kills, etc.
Yeah, it's, the latter example is one that obviously we can't do a heck of a lot about. If guilds want to cheat in that sort of manner, there's really no way for us to enforce it unless we, of course, find out about it and see patterns and other things that that might happen. In terms of gold selling, well, look, you all know how much I love my gold sellers. To say that I have a distaste for them would be great, huge, massive understatement. We're always going to do something about that. I'll certainly bring out the Banhammer again. I loved the Banhammer at One, for Warhammer. But the other thing to keep in mind, because these are both after the fact situations, outside the game, banning obviously, and also checking out guilds. If you look at how we've set things up, the Realm Rewards being, the perfect example. Gold sellers and those who, support them, they make their money simply because they have time to play the game. They know that if they put X amount of people playing the game for X amount of hours in certain areas, they can generate gold. I mean, this has been a thing for friggin' ever. That's one of the reasons behind the Realm Rewards. This is an RVR game. Nothing is written in the same way it is in a PvE game. You're not going out to this location and you can guarantee 99 out of 100 times that if you play in this area and you grind, you can generate, this much gold, these many greens, these many blues, blah, blah, blah. You can't do that in this game. You just can't. Not even in the depths. So there's going to be a lot of gold sellers who will be dismayed, upset, unable to carry out their craft because you just can't do it. Could they play the game and try to, make gold? Oh, absolutely. But gold isn't always a thing. Keep in mind that, some of the examples I've used, even one today, about plot ownership, that's actually in many ways more important than gold. Because you're not buying, you're not just going out there and buying plots. You're getting permission from your king. And somebody in chat was actually, chat when I was doing my story today, asked about the roles of the kings. Are we the players' rules of the game, or there are, outside rules? Well, obviously that's what the kings are for. And so in this case, if you're looking to get a plot, yeah, granted, let's say you found a way to make 1 billion, gazillion, trillion gold in our game. Aside from probably crashing your character because that kind of number just doesn't exist. It wouldn't do you a single bit of good. It really wouldn't. It's not going to help you claim the land. It's not going to allow you to buy the land because you have to have the rights to make that claim. You're going to have to earn that. And so much of our game is based on earning. So maybe this is like, a Godfather game. You have to be an earner. And it's not just gold. So let's look for that one question. 5-minute warning. Because I also want to open the gift and get back to my stuff.
All right. Looking for something good. Well, this is interesting. Toto Tata asks on the YouTube chat, do you necessarily have to balance Banes with boons? Or can we balance Banes with increased secondary stats and boons with decreased secondary stats?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Right now, it's strictly Banes and boons. Is that something that down the road we might want to, adapt the system so it's more total points based, and however you spread the points around is how things work out? That's certainly something that, maybe not for this game, but maybe for another game, I would certainly be interested in doing. A total free-form system where it's absolutely up to you, how you configure your character with nothing other than you have a certain amount of points. The trouble with that, of course, is that, I'm sure we all know this, is that if you have any sort of negative things you must add, even if it's not on a one-to-one basis, generally people will find ways of, well, I put all the negative points into things I really don't care about, so now I have not an OP character, but I now have the flavor of the month for that class. So we'll see. More free form and character creation is something I'm always a fan of, if we can get it, working properly.
Should we go to gift opening?
Yeah,
All
that was a
right.
great question. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right, so we have a box. We have an X-Acto knife. And we have a guy who hopefully won't slit something other than the box. Smooth. Keep your gift a surprise. Unwrap your present before opening this envelope. Okay. That's what we'll do.
Bag.
The only way to do great work is love what you do. Steve Jobs. Wonder if all the people who worked for him would say that. Sorry, couldn't resist. So,
Is it a?
an Andes press office framed. What?
Oh, it's like an inspirational quote with
I
a
think
frame.
so. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. Let's be 100% sure. Yeah, so that's exactly what it is. One frame, one base, one inspirational message
From one awesome backer.
from one very good banks from one awesome backer. And let's see if there's any additional words here. Yep. So this is from Poxer, and Poxer writes, "Hi, City. Me again. This also sits in my office. Great words from a tech visionary, Poxer." Absolutely correct, Poxer. Jokes about Steve Jobs aside, he was an absolute tech visionary who, certainly along with Woz, helped change the course of really personal computer development before the word PC was, a thing and a good word, and then it became a bad word. Like, hey, this office is too PC. But an absolute visionary. Apple's work, even if you don't always love it, and I'm one of those who doesn't always love it, even though I was a major Apple fan, starting with my Apple II, not even my Apple II Plus. So, lots of appreciation for the guy, and for Woz, and for, everybody there who worked so hard to give us some amazing products, from Apple. So thank you very much, as always, Poxer. You've been awesome. We really do, absolutely appreciate it. Again, I've said this a few times, and I'll keep saying it. We've got the best backers in the world. You folks are generous with your time. You're generous with your spirit. You're generous with your patience. And at times you're also very generous with your little thank yous, or even in some cases bigger thank yous for us. And words can't describe how appreciative we are, other than to, as always, say thank you, Poxer. Thank you to all of our backers. I hope you all have a great weekend. For those of you who are in the U.S., enjoy Memorial Day. Enjoy the weekend. And hopefully I will see you all next week. With the update, I may do the second half of that story that I was working on today. Came up pretty well for something that literally I hadn't thought of until this morning. So we'll see where that goes. I'll let you folks know about a test, hopefully within the next, it's almost 5, so within the next hour or so, I'll let you know the status. I honestly don't know right now where we're at. I will know shortly, and if we can have a test this weekend, I'll see you in the game. If not, I'll see you in the game next week. So again, as always, we thank you, and am I missing something?
And look out for the update email with user stories.
Oh yes, thank you. So yes, look out for today's update, which is a user story update. And if I remember what Tyler said earlier today, there's a lot more user stories in.
Oh yeah, I edited it.
Yeah,
there's a lot
in this update than the one 2 weeks ago. So yeah, see you all, and again, have a great weekend, regardless of whether it's a 3-day weekend or just a normal, weekend. So bye, and see you next week.
See you later.